Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Bai Xiaochun's scalp was tingling so hard it felt like it would explode. Eyes crimson, he let out a powerful shout as he slapped more and more paper talismans down onto his body, causing more and more shields to spring up. Soon, he was surrounded by a barrier almost 2 meters thick. Almost in the same moment that all the shields sprang up, the red-robed woman suddenly lunged out of the darkness toward Bai Xiaochun. A bang could be heard as she pierced roughly 30% into the shield barrier before being stopped in place. Then she screamed, a scream that was apparently capable of piercing through the shields. When the ear-splitting sound stabbed into Bai Xiaochun's ears, he began to lose consciousness. Shocked, he bit his tongue hard, which made things clear just in time to see the woman transforming into a swarm of countless red beetles, which then began to batter against his shield. However, the shield was too thick, and the red beetles were incapable of piercing through the 70% that remained. After bouncing back, they flew back and reformed into the shape of the red-robed woman. She stared at Bai Xiaochun for a moment, then began to laugh as she charged toward him once again. Simultaneously, popping sounds could be heard as the ornamental rocks began to ripple and rise up, transforming into stone golems. The fruit trees also sprouted arms and legs, wrenched themselves out from the ground and began to walk forward toward Bai Xiaochun and the others. Especially bizarre was the fact that the fruit on the trees began to laugh and sing nursery rhymes again. One of the trees joined the red-robed woman to specifically target Bai Xiaochun. Puppets, Du Lingfei gasped. Bai Xiaochun was trembling violently. In all the years in which he had lived, he had never experienced such a sensation of imminent danger. As the woman closed in on him, he quickly performed an incantation gesture, drawing upon all his spiritual energy as he waved his finger at her. Instantly, his wooden sword flew out at top speed, a black streak that kicked up a huge blast of wind. Then, a boom echoed out as the sword stabbed into the woman's head. The woman let out a shrill scream, and her body suddenly dissolved into a mass of red beetles, which twitched and spasmed as they fell down onto the ground and then shattered into pieces. The wooden sword didn't vanish. After stabbing through the woman's head, it continued to speed onward toward the fruit tree behind her. It stabbed through the tree, which lurched to a stop and then suddenly exploded. Instantly, the fruit on the tree shriveled up, and yet continued to sing happily even as they died. Everything that was happening caused the hair on Bai Xiaochun's body to stand on end. Thankfully, his wooden sword was extremely powerful, and after stabbing through the tree, it continued to sail through the air and then blasted a hole into the nearby wall. As soon as the hole appeared, though, tentacle-like tendrils began to swirl out from the broken sides, as if the wall were preparing to reform itself. "Get out through that hole!" Du Lingfei cried, instantly flickering into motion. However, Feng Yan was the closest of all of them to the hole in the wall. Wincing at the pain of wasting such a valuable item, he produced another of the black medicinal pills and then threw it down in front of the young man with the lantern. A huge boom echoed out. Feng Yan then borrowed the force of the resulting explosion to fly toward the hole. Just when he was on the verge of shooting out through the hole, though, his face fell, as 2 huge stone lions leapt in from outside. Roaring, they charged, one of them toward Feng Yan, the other toward Bai Xiaochun. Astonishingly, these were the same 2 stone lions which had been standing guard outside the main gate. "You can't escape," said the young man with the lantern. "Everyone from the Spirit Stream sect shall die." He began to laugh as he once again began to fight with Feng Yan. When Feng Yan saw that the hole in the wall was already beginning to mend itself, he roared, hands flashing in a double-handed incantation gesture as he summoned a head-sized fireball. That fireball emanated blistering heat as it expanded, sending a wave of flames out in all directions. The stone lions were shoved back, and the young Luochen clan cultivator's face flickered. There were also 2 tree ants who were caught up in the flames, one of which exploded. The other Trent tried to fall back, but was then directly hit by Du Lingfei's deadly flying sword. Rumbling booms echoed out as green sap exploded out from the destroyed tree ants. At the same time, it was revealed that inside of the 2 tree ants were emaciated, gasping figures, whose life force seemed to have been almost completely absorbed. One of those figures collapsed, unconscious, whereas the other struggled to open his eyes, and then looked excitedly at Du Lingfei. "Elder brother Hu," she cried, having instantly recognized Hu Yunfei. she immediately scooped him up into her arms. At the same time, the weakened Hu Yunfei grabbed Du Lingfei's arm and poured his last remaining bit of spiritual power into her. The Luochen clan has turned traitor. We have to get out of here and warn the sect. Du Lingfei's spiritual energy instantly swelled. Gritting her teeth, she held Hu Yunfei in her arms as she shot toward the hole in the wall with even greater speed. When Bai Xiaochun looked over, he instantly recognized Hu Yunfei. Then, he flickered into motion as he dodged the stone lion and sped toward the hole in the wall. As of this point, Du Lingfei was now closest to the breach in the wall, with Feng Yan and Bai Xiaochun close on her heels. The fastest of them all was Bai Xiaochun, who was quickly closing the distance between himself and Du Lingfei. Feng Yan's face was pale white. The fireball he had just unleashed had taken quite a toll on him. However, after noticing the speed with which Bai Xiaochun was moving, his eyes suddenly flickered with a cold glow, and he held up his hand, within which could be seen a black medicinal pill. Junior sister Du, you have to get word back to the sect. I'll give you a bit of extra power. With that, he flung the black medicinal pill down into the space between Du Lingfei and Bai Xiaochun. As the medicinal pill exploded, a powerful force blasted out, pushing Du Lingfei toward the hole even faster than before. Then, a plopping sound like splashing water could be heard as she burst out. In contrast, Bai Xiaochun was blocked by the explosion, and was suddenly set upon by the stone lion. Instantly, his eyes turned bright red. Feng Yan, he bellowed. A wind blasted out as the stone lion pounced. Just as Bai Xiaochun was about to dodge, 3 tree ants closed in. There were now 4 puppets all attacking him simultaneously, making it impossible to evade. A popping sound could be heard as his shields glittered brightly and then began to shatter. Even the green shield from the jade pendant faded and shattered. Although the majority of the force of the blow was dissipated, the stone lion was extraordinary, and its attack landed fully on Bai Xiaochun's chest. The massive force sent Bai Xiaochun flying, his entire body shaking. Junior brother Bai, Feng Yan cried said, although a cold smile twisted his lips, his words sounded bitter and lamenting. And yet, he didn't slow down at all. In the blink of an eye, he passed into the rippling hole in the wall. Just when he was about to burst through to the other side, the young Luochen clan cultivator let out a piercing shriek, then suddenly exploded into a mass of countless chunks of flesh, all devoid of blood, which then shot toward Feng Yan. Before Feng Yan could pass through the gap in the wall, the chunks of flesh wrapped around him and began to drag him backward. Feng Yan let out a roar of rage as he was pulled out. By this point, the hole in the wall was on the verge of closing up completely. After gritting his teeth for a moment, he then bit down on his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood, which landed onto his flying sword. The flying sword instantly turned crimson. Instead of shooting out an attack, it then exploded, transforming into a cloud of shrapnel that shot back toward him. Although it was injurious to himself, the hail of shrapnel also managed to slash away the chunks of flesh which had grabbed a hold of him. He was now freed, but was also covered in a mass of cuts and wounds. The pain from his mangled flesh threatened to render him unconscious, but he was still able to clench his jaw and shoot back toward the hole in the wall. Meanwhile, Bai Xiaochun had been slammed by the lion's paw, sending him tumbling backward, screaming. And yet, even as his scream was still echoing out into the air, Bai Xiaochun looked down in surprise at his chest to discover that, although his clothing was shredded, his skin hadn't been harmed at all. In fact, he didn't even feel any pain. After performing a quick inspection, he confirmed that, although the situation had seemed extremely dangerous, he hadn't been hurt in the least. The stone lion's blow had sent him flying, but other than that, it had done virtually nothing. Even as his elation grew, the tree ants closed in, and one of them punched him in the back. Although he was thrown forward, he felt no pain at all, whereupon he threw his head back and laughed uproariously. I can't believe I'm actually so strong. Fudge, what do I have to be afraid of? Enlivened, and now fully confident, he shot into the air toward the gap in the wall, moving with even greater speed than before. In the blink of an eye, he was at the gap. Feng Yan was now about halfway through the gap, and didn't even notice Bai Xiaochun and his sudden burst of speed. In his mind, Bai Xiaochun had probably already been killed by the numerous puppets. Just as Feng Yan was about to free himself, a furious gleam appeared in Bai Xiaochun's eyes, and he reached out toward Feng Yan's shoulder, which was already outside of the hole. Free at last, Feng Yan laughed, but then, he suddenly felt a huge force dragging him back through the hole. No, he howled. Before he could even see what was dragging him, he felt his bag of holding slip away, and then he was flung deep into the courtyard, away from the gap. It was only at this point that he saw Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun, he howled, eyes bloodshot. However, he was now cut off by the two stone lions. Booms rang out, followed by a miserable scream. Elder brother Feng, Bai Xiaochun screamed, simultaneously leaping through the hole in the wall. Just as he emerged on the other side, the hole finished closing up. He was now outside, no longer in the courtyard of the Luochen clan. As for Du Lingfei, she had continued to run as soon as she had emerged, and was now waiting some distance off at the edge of the forest. When she saw Bai Xiaochun appear, she was just about to call out to him when he suddenly began to wail miserably. Elder brother Feng, not only did you give me your bag of holding to help me escape, you also held off the puppets. Oh, elder brother Feng. After hearing Bai Xiaochun's words, Du Lingfei felt horrible. However, the gap was closed, and Bai Xiaochun was just standing there in grief and indignation, so she quickly said, Bai Xiaochun, come on, let's go. Not needing any further coercion, Bai Xiaochun began to run, tears streaming down his face. Helping Du Lingfei support Hu Yunfei, they vanished into the forest. Looking over his shoulder, Bai Xiaochun frowned sadly and said, Elder brother Feng, such a good guy. Du Lingfei was very upset. She had never imagined that the mission would be this dangerous. Then she remembered Bai Xiaochun's suggestion to not come to the Luochen clan, and realized that if they had listened to him, Feng Yan might not have died. And when she saw that Bai Xiaochun was in so much grief that he was on the verge of beating his own chest, she felt even worse. Finally, she sighed. Junior brother Bai, she said, looking at him bitterly, let's hurry up. If the Luochen clan has turned traitor, they won't want the sect getting wind of it. I just tried to send word back, but there's interference in the area. Transmission jade slips won't work. Bai Xiaochun shivered, feeling more in danger than ever before. Meanwhile, beneath the Luochen clan mansion was a sprawling, underground necropolis. In one part of the necropolis was a lake of simmering blood, filled with countless floating skeletons. The glitter of a spell formation could be seen surrounding the entire thing, and countless members of the Luochen clan were prostrating themselves around the lake. There were men and women, youngsters and old-timers, all of whom knelt at key nexuses within the spell formation. It was with utter solemnity that one by one, they would slice open their right hands and squeeze blood down onto the nexuses, which carried the blood into the central lake. In the very middle of that lake of blood, an old man sat cross-legged. His hair was long and white, and he seemed threatening without being angry. With every breath he took, the lake of blood bubbled. Suddenly, the man's eyes opened, and they gleamed with a blood-colored glow. What's going on? He demanded, his cold voice echoing throughout the necropolis. One of the clan members closest to him was a young man, who looked exactly like the young man from up in the courtyard who had tried to kill Bai Xiaochun and the others. He leaned over and whispered, Patriarch, 3 disciples from the Spirit Stream sect showed up. It happened so quickly that I was caught unprepared. I was worried that it would influence the larger task at hand, so my puppet body on the outside, along with the spell formation and the other puppets, tried to kill them. Unfortunately, I'm so useless, Senior. I only managed to kill one. The other 2 escaped, and they took the other disciple we caught last time with them. The young man was feeling quite discouraged. Normally speaking, if a disciple of the Spirit Stream sect went missing, it would take at least half a year before the sect officially declared them as missing. Only then would other disciples be sent to investigate. Considering that, by the time such disciples arrived in the Fallen Star Mountains, at least 9 months should have passed. However, only 4 months had gone by, and yet disciples from the Spirit Stream sect had already arrived. It wasn't just this young man who was taken aback. No one in the entire Luochen clan could have guessed that the disappearance of a mere outer sect disciple was anything to worry about. Logically speaking, no one should have been sent to investigate so quickly. Furthermore, if Hu Yunfei hadn't managed to uncover the secrets of the Luochen clan, they would never have taken him captive. According to their original plan, they needed half a year to be completely prepared, then rise up and free themselves from the control of the Spirit Stream sect. However, that meant they still need a month of time. 2 outer sect disciples. HMPH. The defensive spell formation has already been activated. Seal the area and send people to track them down and kill them. We only need 1 more month, and then nothing will be able to stop us. The old man didn't seem to be worried at all about what had happened, and closed his eyes to continue meditating. The young man sighed, bowing his head in compliance. It didn't take long before 7 figures emerged from within the Luochen clan. The one in the lead position was the same young man, whose cultivation base was in the 8th level of qi condensation. Of the other 6, the weakest were in the 6th level of qi condensation, with 2 being in the 7th. They won't be able to get far. Let's go. The 7 cultivators shot into the jungle, eyes shining with killing intent. Out in the jungle, Bai Xiaochun and Du Lingfei were moving along as fast as possible while simultaneously propping up Hu Yunfei. They tried to use their wind skiff, but apparently the same interference from the spell formation that made transmission jade slips inoperable had the same effect on the ship. The expressions on the faces of Bai Xiaochun and Du Lingfei grew even darker. Bai Xiaochun's face was pale, and the sensation of imminent crisis within him couldn't be greater. Every inch of flesh and blood within him was screaming out at him to flee as fast as he could. If he went any slower, he would surely die. The sensation of danger was far greater than what he had felt from Feng Yan. After all, even though Feng Yan had tried to kill him, he had been nervous about it and tried to do it secretly. Bai Xiaochun had known all along that as long as he was careful, he would most likely be able to avoid whatever move Feng Yan made against him, and could probably even strike back at him. But now, the instant he thought about the information in their possession, he trembled, and sweat began to pour down his face. Considering that they knew about the Luochen clan's betrayal, it was obvious that they wouldn't hesitate to kill all of them. They would no doubt go to any and all lengths to ensure their silence. Furthermore, they wouldn't strike out in secret, they would attack like a lightning bolt. Nor would they allow much time for them to get very far away. In fact, there were almost certainly members of the Luochen clan chasing after them already. Damn you, Hall of Justice. This mission is not the type that outer sect disciples can handle. Then Bai Xiaochun remembered that the Luochen clan had a foundation establishment patriarch, and he began to shake even harder. Foundation establishment. The difference between qi condensation and foundation establishment is like the difference between being mortal and being in qi condensation. Bai Xiaochun was so nervous that his eyes were bloodshot. I practice cultivation, to live forever. Bai Xiaochun wanted to cry, but no tears would come. He looked over at Hu Yunfei, and knew that he would never be able to abandon him just to gain some speed. That was something he could never bring himself to do. Du Lingfei's face was pale, her cultivation base was the weakest of them all, and her internal spiritual energy was recovering very slowly. The more time passed, the worse she felt about the situation. She knew that they were facing almost certain death. Perhaps someone in the 7th level of qi condensation might be able to fight back against a foundation establishment patriarch. But now, Feng Yan was dead, and she was only in the 5th level of qi condensation, with no hope of being able to break through to the next level anytime soon. As for Bai Xiaochun, considering how scared he was of dying, Du Lingfei would never place any hope in him. I never imagined I would die on my first mission outside of the sect, she thought, laughing bitterly. However, things weren't over yet, and it wasn't the time to give up, so she gritted her teeth and produced a medicinal pill from within her bag of holding and popped it into her mouth. Then she looked over at Bai Xiaochun, who was pale-faced and shivering, and she sighed. At the moment, she no longer felt any scorn for him. Producing a medicinal pill bottle, she tossed it over to him. Junior brother Bai, make sure to keep your internal spiritual energy up. Bai Xiaochun stared in shock at the medicinal pill bottle, then opened it and consumed one of the pills. It was at this point that he suddenly remembered something, and produced 2 medicinal pill bottles from Feng Yan's bag of holding. Elder brother Feng had some medicinal pills, he said, handing one of the bottles to Du Lingfei. She accepted it silently, and the 2 of them proceeded along as fast as possible. Before long, they were back in the location where they had discovered Hu Yunfei's jade slip. When Du Lingfei saw that tree, she sighed inwardly. By now, it was useless to have regrets, so without another word, they continued to speed along. Gradually, Du Lingfei began to slow down, which made Bai Xiaochun even more nervous. Finally, he then grabbed her by the arm and pulled her along, carrying Hu Yunfei at the same time. Du Lingfei had long since noticed that Bai Xiaochun was much faster than her. When he grabbed her arm, she almost pulled away, but when she saw the look of terror on his face, she sighed and allowed him to pull her along. It was at this point that Hu Yunfei shivered, and his eyes slowly opened. He looked exhausted. After assessing his current position, he laughed bitterly and said, "Junior brother Bai, I never thought that, after all these years, we would meet again like this." Seeing that Hu Yunfei was awake, Du Lingfei quickly offered him a medicinal pill. Bai Xiaochun looked at Hu Yunfei and sighed. "Elder brother Hu. There's still hope for us," Hu Yunfei said. For their own personal benefit, the Luochen clan slaughtered people from the mortal world, extracting their blood and bones for use in a spell formation. Their foundation establishment patriarch is currently presiding over an inverse blood grand magic, so he can't personally come after us. Furthermore, the entire Luochen clan is maintaining the spell formation. Therefore, they won't be able to send very many people after us. Hu Yunfei smiled, took the medicinal pill from Du Lingfei, and swallowed it. Then, his eyes began to shine as he said, "Although we can't get a message to the sect from this location, if we get far enough away, we'll definitely be able to. Something big like this, an entire cultivator clan rebelling, will definitely provoke a huge reaction from the sect." Thanks to the medicinal pill, he no longer needed help from Bai Xiaochun, and began to speed along on his own power. Because of that, they managed to pick up speed. Soon, the borders of the Fallen Star Mountains became visible, and eventually, they shot out into the open, whereupon Du Lingfei pulled out a jade slip and tried to make contact with the sect. Moments later, her face drained of blood, and she shook her head. "Still not working," muttered Bai Xiaochun, his heart pounding. Hu Yunfei merely stood there silently. None of them spoke any further as they continued on dejectedly. It was at this point that, all of a sudden, a whistling sound could be heard from behind them. Their faces fell as 7 figures burst out of the trees not too far away. In the lead was the young man in the 8th level of Qi condensation, who looked at Bai Xiaochun and the others, eyes flickering with killing intent. "Like I said, you can't get away. Never forget that the person who killed you is named Chen Yu. Kill them." The Luochen clan members immediately pulled out magical devices, and cold light appeared in their eyes as they closed in. The faces of Bai Xiaochun, Du Lingfei, and Hu Yunfei flickered, and they gritted their teeth as they tried to pick up speed. Chen Yu was laughing coldly as he flicked his sleeve, causing a violet skull to appear. As it sped through the air, it cackled madly, and within the blink of an eye, it was almost directly upon Bai Xiaochun and the others. At that point, Chen Yu waved his finger, and the skull exploded. The resulting shockwave sent the 3 Spirit Stream sect disciples spinning apart. Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei suddenly lost their momentum, and were almost instantly surrounded by the Luochen clan members. Bai Xiaochun, however, kept speeding along. Before, he had been somewhat held back by the other two, but now that he was on his own, he burst out with incredible speed, breaking free of the Luochen clan members. It only took a moment for him to put dozens of meters between them, and from the look of it, he was only starting to pick up speed. Even Chen Yu, the only member of the Luochen clan present who was in the 8th level of Qi condensation, could do nothing but stare in shock. "He's fast," Chen Yu said coolly. "First kill these two, then we'll go after him." Waving his sleeve, he turned to Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei, killing intent boiling. Du Lingfei coughed up a mouthful of blood. Her body was already spattered in blood, she was surrounded and certain that she was going to die. As she looked at Bai Xiaochun fleeing off into the distance, she began to laugh bitterly. She was well aware that Bai Xiaochun feared death, so although she wasn't very surprised, she couldn't help but feel bitter and hopeless. "Junior brother Bai, I hope you managed to get away," she thought. At the same time, she performed an incantation gesture, sending a flying sword out with the power of lightness and heaviness. Coughing up more blood, she continued to try to defend herself. Hu Yunfei was also laughing bitterly, but his eyes shone with a cold light. He let out a roar, and although his spiritual energy was mostly depleted, he wasn't ready to just give in. Gritting his teeth, he prepared to take some of the enemy with him as he died, if only to buy some more time for Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun's face was pale and his heart was pounding. The sensation of danger left him so alarmed that he felt like he might die at any moment, leaving him shaking uncontrollably. He had never been this frightened before in his entire life. Not when he had left his village to light the incense and brave the lightning, not when Li Qinghao had taken him to 10,000 Snakes Valley, not even when he had seen all those fantastic and powerful creatures while traveling. In all those situations, he had been nervous, but he had also been confident that he wouldn't die. But today, he had the distinct sensation that he was really going to die. As he flew along, he suddenly realized that he was alone. Then he looked back in shock to see that the 7 members of the Luochen clan had surrounded Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei several hundred meters back. He also saw that Du Lingfei was coughing up blood. Anyone in this situation would be able to tell that she and Hu Yunfei wouldn't be able to hold on for very long before they were cut down. A tremor ran through Bai Xiaochun as he stood there watching. He began to shake even harder, and his eyes were completely shot with blood. He could feel his very soul screaming at him to run away as quickly as possible. In fact, Bai Xiaochun was quite sure that, considering the speed he could maintain, and given that Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei were preventing the enemy from giving chase, there was actually a good chance that he could get away. If he did, he could keep on living, he could continue to practice cultivation, and he could pursue what he really wanted, eternal life with no death. Not only would the sect not punish him if he survived, they would even reward him. However, if he simply ran away, leaving Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei to their deaths, he would feel guilty for the rest of his life. He felt as if his entire body had been split in half, with one half telling him to flee at top speed, otherwise he would die. The other half was telling him that if he left his fellow sect members to die, that he would never be able to rest at ease for the rest of his life. Panting, he let out a frustrated cry of anger. Blue veins bulged out on his forehead, and he was shaking as hard as a tumbling die. At the moment, he wasn't thinking much about the specifics of the situation, or the potential consequences. His hands clenched into fists as a single thought ran through his head. I might be afraid of dying, but I'm not gonna just run away. He suddenly began to beat at his chest with his fists. His eyes were completely bloodshot, and he let out a thunderous roar as he suddenly turned and shot back toward Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei. He moved so quickly that whistling sounds echoed out in all directions. Hu Yunfei trembled at the sight of Bai Xiaochun's sudden reversal in course, and his expression was hard to read. He looked astonished, thankful, and all of a sudden, he started laughing. Then, determination glimmered in his eyes, and without even thinking about defense, he charged toward the Luochen clan members with everything he had. Simultaneously, Du Lingfei, whose body was splattered with blood from where a flying sword had slashed across her, looked up to see Bai Xiaochun, eyes bloodshot, roaring as he charged in their direction. She felt as if she had been struck by lightning, and her jaw dropped. Tears began to roll down her cheeks as numerous emotions flooded through her. She was touched, excited, and shaken. She knew how much Bai Xiaochun was afraid of dying, so when she saw him flying toward them, physically trembling, eyes crimson, she could only imagine how much bravery he had summoned, to stop running away, turn around, and then come back for them. Get out of here, you idiot! Run! Don't get yourself killed! Tears streamed down her face. As Bai Xiaochun ran toward them bellowing at the top of his lungs, she didn't notice that one of the Luochen clan disciples in the 6th level of qi condensation was unleashing a palm strike toward her back. A boom rang out, and blood sprayed out of her mouth. Her vision swam as she tumbled to the ground. Then, one of the Luochen clan cultivators' flying swords began to speed through the air toward her head. When Bai Xiaochun saw what was happening, he let out an even more violent roar, and pushed forward with another burst of speed, reaching his very limit. He streaked through the air, turning into a beam of light that shot toward Du Lingfei. Even as the flying sword bore down on her, Bai Xiaochun landed at her side, scooped her up with one arm, then clenched his right hand into a fist and punched out toward the flying sword. A boom echoed out as the flying sword was sent spinning away by the force of Bai Xiaochun's blow. The Luochen clan members were all greatly shocked. Chen Yu's eyes flickered with surprise, but then quickly began to radiate icy killing intent. Nice. An expert in disguise. I should have noticed you back when you were in the Shadow Hell formation. Listen up everyone, ignore the other two and kill this guy. As soon as the words left his mouth, murderous looks appeared in the eyes of the other Luochen clan members, and they began to close in on Bai Xiaochun. Du Lingfei was in a bit of a daze as Bai Xiaochun held her in his arms. Before she could do anything, he put her down off to the side and then shot toward the incoming Luochen clan cultivators. His eyes were bright red, and it almost seemed that as of this moment, he wasn't thinking about dying at all. In fact, he wasn't thinking about anything except, save Hu Yunfei. Save Du Lingfei, kill all enemies. The nearest of those opponents was in the 6th level of qi condensation, and as he closed in, his hands flickered in an incantation gesture. In response, a glowing awl suddenly appeared, which shot viciously toward Bai Xiaochun. Screw off. Bai Xiaochun roared, unleashing a ferocious palm strike. The little awl began to wobble, and when Bai Xiaochun's palm slammed into it, the glowing light shattered, and the awl was sent spinning away. The cultivator who had summoned the awl gasped, and an expression of shock flickered across his face. Just when he was about to fall back in retreat, Bai Xiaochun performed an incantation gesture and pointed out. His wooden sword appeared and shot out like lightning. It didn't matter that his opponent was in the 6th level of qi condensation, he was incapable of evading and in fact, didn't even have time to react before the sword stabbed into his forehead. A miserable shriek echoed out as the wooden sword stabbed all the way through him, coming out the other side in a spray of blood. Then, it circled through the air and headed toward the next enemy. At the same time, one of the Luochen clan members in the 7th level of qi condensation performed an incantation gesture, causing mist to roil up around him, making him look like an enormous mist giant. Even as he closed in, Bai Xiaochun's hand suddenly shot out, and his thumb and index fingers connected. Black light flickered, and the defenses provided by the mist could do nothing to stop the black light. Throat-crushing grasp. Cracking sounds rang out as the mist dissipated. The cultivator's eyes went wide at the sight of the arm grabbing his neck. Then, his throat was completely crushed. Everything happened with incredible speed. Only a few breaths of time had passed since Bai Xiaochun had begun his charge, and already, 2 members of the Luochen clan had been killed. Hu Yunfei, who had already fallen back to stand at Du Lingfei's side, gasped, and his eyes went wide with shock. Du Lingfei was completely and utterly taken aback. The Bai Xiaochun she was seeing right now was completely different from the one she remembered, causing her to pant in disbelief. Was this really the same Bai Xiaochun who was so afraid of dying? At this point, the remaining shocked members of the Luochen clan finally unleashed their killing moves. These were their most powerful trump cards, one being a flying sword, another a pearl, and the last, a little cauldron, all of which shot toward Bai Xiaochun. Astonishingly, the 3 of them were joining forces to attack simultaneously. Of that group of 3, 2 were in the 6th level of qi condensation, and 1 was in the 7th. Their combined attack was completely vicious as they went all out with everything they had to try to strike down Bai Xiaochun when he couldn't dodge. Bai Xiaochun's eyes were glowing red as the 3 closed in on him. Even as their magical devices bore down on him, he curled his arms and legs up until he looked like a ball. Previously, Du Lingfei had mocked the big black wok he wore on his back, but now, it covered him up completely. The little cauldron which had been unleashed by the 7th level cultivator slammed into the black wok, causing a boom to echo out that could shake heaven and earth. Cracks spread out across the wok, but it held strong against the cauldron. Next was the pearl. Rumbling sounds echoed out as it slammed into the wok. The wok couldn't hold up any longer, and exploded, transforming into countless black fragments that showered out in all directions. Bai Xiaochun shot out from the wreckage, flying toward the 7th level cultivator. When the man saw Bai Xiaochun flying toward him, his face fell. He immediately fell back, but couldn't move fast enough. None of the magical protective items the man had could do anything to stop Bai Xiaochun, who slammed into him, causing the cracking sounds of breaking bones to ring out. Instantly, Bai Xiaochun went in for another attack, butting him with his head. Boom! No, screamed the man. Blood sprayed out of his mouth, and a look of despair filled his eyes, but he couldn't break free from Bai Xiaochun. Off to the side, his fellow clan members in the 6th level of qi condensation were nearly scared out of their minds. Trembling, one of them sent a flying sword toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun completely ignored it as he once again lunged toward the middle-aged man. The flying sword slammed into Bai Xiaochun, and in a completely shocking twist, it didn't stab into him, but rather, bounced off and was sent spinning away. Bai Xiaochun let out a roar, striking the middle-aged man once more. A blood-curdling scream echoed out as the man died. To the other 2 clan members in the 6th level of qi condensation, Bai Xiaochun, with his bloodshot eyes and disheveled hair, looked like a wild beast. Their scalps began to tingle as he slowly turned to look at them. Without the slightest hesitation, they turned and fled. Off in the distance, Chen Yu was completely shaken by what had just occurred, and he could scarcely even believe what he had just witnessed. Seeing that the 2 6th level cultivators were fleeing, Bai Xiaochun performed an incantation gesture, then waved his finger. His little wooden sword instantly flew through the air, slashing across the neck of one of the cultivators. His companion's eyes instantly shone with an unprecedented level of astonishment and terror. They were the ones who were supposed to be doing the chasing and killing, but now, the tables had turned, and they were being cut down. In a few short moments, Bai Xiaochun had already killed 4 people. The remaining 6th-level cultivator had an ashen face as he went all out to try to escape. His heart was pounding, and he was trembling all over. How could he ever have imagined that the slender, pure and fair spirit stream sect disciple could be so utterly terrifying? Bai Xiaochun's eyes shone with a savage gleam, and he was just about to give chase when, all of a sudden, a sensation of danger welled up in his heart. At the same time, Du Lingfei cried out urgently, "Watch out!" Bai Xiaochun immediately leapt backward. In almost the exact same instant, a 3-meter-tall violet skull shot into the area where he had just been standing, then exploded. A boom rang out as the power of explosion blasted out, slamming into Bai Xiaochun. For the first time, his undying iron skin felt pain, and blood even oozed out of his mouth as he flew backward. The person to attack him had been none other than Chen Yu, who was in the 8th level of qi condensation. His expression was unsightly, and a very serious look could be seen in his eyes. After saving his fellow clan member from danger, he flashed through the air toward Bai Xiaochun. Behind him were 2 other cultivators, who were in the 6th level of qi condensation. They gritted their teeth and followed along. 3 people were now charging toward Bai Xiaochun. Hu Yunfei wanted to help, but was simply too weak. The attack he had made earlier drained him of the last scrap of spiritual energy he had, and blood was currently seeping out of the corners of his mouth. Unfortunately, he was in no state to fight. Du Lingfei had been seriously injured, and as she anxiously watched Bai Xiaochun fighting, she realized that all of the previous hostility and prejudice she had felt toward him were gone. Bai Xiaochun's face was ashen as more blood oozed out of his mouth. He appeared to be on the verge of collapsing, and had seemingly lost much of the speed he had been capable of earlier. Seeing that, Chen Yu and his companions closed in for the kill. However, as they closed in, a brutal gleam appeared in Bai Xiaochun's eyes. While it was true that his undying iron skin couldn't completely block Chen Yu's attack moments ago, the truth was that it had absorbed the majority of the force of the attack. His current weak state, and even the blood oozing out of his mouth, were all an act. In the blink of an eye, he redoubled his speed. Furthermore, instead of retreating, he switched directions, passing Chen Yu toward his true target, the 2 6th-level Luochen clan cultivators. Chen Yu's face flickered, and even as he made to block Bai Xiaochun's path, Bai Xiaochun's wooden sword shot toward him. Chen Yu performed an incantation gesture and pointed out, summoning the same skull from earlier. Rumbling sounds echoed out, but Chen Yu was incapable of stopping Bai Xiaochun. A fierce gleam appeared in Chen Yu's eyes, and he waved his sleeve, causing a lantern to materialize, which expanded out in a fireball that sped toward Bai Xiaochun. At the same time, the 2 weaker cultivators were crying out in shock and falling back in retreat. However, Bai Xiaochun moved as fast as lightning, and was almost instantly upon one of them, whereupon he reached out with his thumb and index finger, causing a flickering black glow to appear as he pinched his fingers together. Throat-crushing grasp. The nearest Luochen clan cultivator screamed, and then a cracking sound echoed out as his neck was crushed. At the same time, the blisteringly hot fireball was closing in on Bai Xiaochun from behind, and there was clearly no time for him to jump out of the way. Instantly, it slammed into him. A sea of flames exploded out, surrounding Bai Xiaochun, and causing both Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei to shout out in alarm. Bai Xiaochun. Further off, the surviving cultivator among the duo seemed delighted at the sight of Bai Xiaochun being consumed by the fire, and even started laughing. But then something barreled out from within the sea of flames to appear directly in front of that laughing cultivator. His eyes went wide, and before he could even retreat, Bai Xiaochun kicked down viciously, crushing the man's head into his torso. He didn't even have a chance to scream before he was completely dead. By this point, Bai Xiaochun was panting, and his eyes were even more shot with blood than before. Wounds riddled his body, and blood was oozing out of his mouth as he slowly looked up to glare at the last member of the Luochen clan. Chen Yu. Being stared at in such a way caused Chen Yu's heart to prickle. His cultivation base was in the 8th level of qi condensation, and he could be considered one of the chosen in his clan. Although he didn't quite have the status of crown prince, he had the approval of the patriarch and had experienced numerous deadly battles with beasts in the Fallen Star Mountains. Such deadly tempering had given him extraordinary battle prowess. As such, he completely looked down upon disciples of the Spirit Stream sect. Although they far exceed him in terms of status, to him, cultivators from the big sects were like flowers in a flower pot. Although they had extraordinary divine abilities, when it came to battles of life and death, they couldn't possibly match up to him. And yet now, Bai Xiaochun caused terror to well up inside of him. In fact, the moment that Bai Xiaochun's eyes locked onto him, he felt more frightened than any time he had encountered a wild beast in the Fallen Star Mountains. That gaze contained a ferocity that seemed to wish to consume him alive, and caused coldness to spread out in Chen Yu's heart. When he thought about the fact that this person had slaughtered 6 of his fellow clan members in quick succession, he was completely and utterly shaken. In fact, what was most unbelievable of all was that this person's cultivation base was merely in the great circle of the 6th level of qi condensation. He's way too powerful and fast. He obviously cultivates some sort of body refinement magic, and has cultivated it to the level that he can kill people in one blow. Furthermore, his defenses are terrifying. He doesn't have any magical techniques, but his control over his flying sword is incredible. The sword not only moves with unimaginable speed, it's backed with astonishing power. And that wooden sword is definitely no ordinary item. It's obviously something so incredible it can kill someone in the 6th level of qi condensation. This guy must be a famous chosen from the Spirit Stream sect. How come I've never heard his name before? Bai Xiaochun. In his shock, Chen Yu felt a desire to fight burning within him. He waved his hand, causing 3 fist-sized jade skulls to fly out. His expression was very serious as he looked over at Bai Xiaochun. I underestimated you, but that's not going to happen again. Let's see which is more powerful, the magical techniques of your Spirit Stream sect, or the killer ghouls of my Luochen clan. Even as his words continued to echo out, Chen Yu performed an incantation gesture, causing the 3 skulls to suddenly begin to scream in very lifelike fashion. They also rapidly grew larger, until each one was fully 3 meters tall. Then, they all shot toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun's breath came in ragged pants. His mind was a blank, devoid of any thinking. He had forgotten about the possibility of dying, and the only thing he had was the impulse to cut down his opponent. As the skulls closed in on him, he quickly performed an incantation gesture with his right hand, then waved his finger, sending his little wooden sword screaming out, to be joined by 2 other ordinary flying swords. Instantly, massive amounts of sword light filled the area as Bai Xiaochun began his charge. There was also a little shield which appeared and began to fly around him, radiating magical light. A moment later, Bai Xiaochun and his flying swords slammed into the skulls, causing massive rumbling sounds to echo out. Instantly, fierce fighting broke out between Bai Xiaochun and Chen Yu. Chen Yu was in the 8th level of qi condensation, with a cultivation base much more profound than Bai Xiaochun's. However, in terms of power and defense, as the two fought, it became obvious that they were about even. Waves of shock battered Du Lingfei's heart. She was so nervous that her hands were clenched into fists, and her fingernails dug painfully into her palms. The annoying Bai Xiaochun she remembered from the competition was nowhere to be seen. He had been replaced by someone with veins of steel, someone who was able to fight with Chen Yu of the Luochen clan. I misjudged him. This is the real Bai Xiaochun. He really is afraid of dying, but to come back and fight to the death like he has done takes far more courage than that possessed by most ordinary people. As she looked at Bai Xiaochun, Du Lingfei's eyes glowed with increased vigor. Even though he fears death, his heart is strong, and he has principles. Even if he is afraid of getting killed, he won't give up on his companions. Ear-splitting booms rang out constantly. Before long, Bai Xiaochun's 2 ordinary flying swords were destroyed. Only his wooden sword remained. However, the 3 skulls were much dimmer than before, and were clearly significantly damaged as they flew back to Chen Yu. Bai Xiaochun took advantage of the opportunity that provided to launch another attack. Blood sprayed out of Chen Yu's mouth as Bai Xiaochun's throat-crushing grasp latched onto his arm. Cracking sounds rang out as the bones were shattered. However, Chen Yu still managed to spit a tiny sword out of his mouth, which shot toward Bai Xiaochun and stabbed a full inch into his shoulder. Not even the undying iron skin could stop it, and blood immediately began to flow. Chen Yu instantly shot backward, but before he could get very far, Bai Xiaochun, eyes bloodshot and completely disregarding his own injuries, gave chase at top speed. Chen Yu's face looked extremely unsightly as he clenched his jaw in the face of the deadly situation that was developing. He quickly performed an incantation gesture and then tapped his forehead, causing his entire body to tremble. Even as all of the qi and blood in his body began to surge violently, he slapped his hand down onto the crown of his head. Bai Xiaochun, someone is going to die today, and it will be either me or you. On any other occasion, Chen Yu would have already ceased fighting. But this was a critical moment for his clan, and he knew that he had to kill Bai Xiaochun. He quickly spit out some of his life blood, which was voraciously consumed by the three skulls. Ghoul bloodbath, he howled as he unleashed his secret magic. The three skulls' eyes began to glow with mysterious light as they shot toward Chen Yu and began to madly chew away at his flesh and blood as they tried to burrow into his body. The bizarre sight caused Du Lingfei and Hu Yunfei to gasp. Simultaneously, Chen Yu let out a miserable howl. His entire body was shaking, and his expression was completely vicious as a black fog roiled out from inside of him, transforming him into a 3-meter-tall ghoul. Die, he roared, shoving his hand out as he shot toward Bai Xiaochun. You'll be the one to die. Bai Xiaochun howled. His hands flashed in a double-handed incantation gesture, and then he pointed up into the air. Spiritual energy roiled madly out of him, shooting up into the air to form the shocking image of a cauldron. This was none other than Violet Qi Cauldron Summoning. Violet Qi Cauldron Summoning. Hu Yunfei and Du Lingfei were both shocked, and expressions of intense astonishment appeared on their faces. That was especially true of Du Lingfei. Having mastered the art of lightness and heaviness, she knew how difficult Violet Qi Cauldron Summoning was, and that on all of the South Bank, only a few people could do it. Rumbling echoed out as the huge cauldron slammed into the ghoul. The ground quaked as it screamed and collapsed into numerous strands of black fog that roiled out in all directions, revealing Chen Yu. Blood sprayed out of his mouth as he slammed down onto the ground. Looking up bitterly at the huge cauldron, he murmured, Violet Qi Cauldron Summoning. With that, he struggled to turn his head to look one more time at Bai Xiaochun before passing away into death. The secret magic he had unleashed inflicted serious damage on his internal organs. That, coupled with a blow from the Violet Qi Cauldron Summoning that destroyed even the ghoul, ensured that he had no hope of surviving. Even as he died, his eyes were still staring at Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun looked at the dead Chen Yu, and then suddenly sagged in place. His internal spiritual energy had been vastly depleted, leaving him dizzy and as weak as a deflated balloon. He stood there, shivering, swaying back and forth, his face pale. He almost didn't dare to believe that he had actually killed all these people. As he thought back to the events which had just played out, he suddenly noticed a sweet taste, which was the blood oozing out of his mouth. I'm bleeding, he thought. I almost got killed. Everywhere hurt, especially his shoulder. There were also numerous burns all over his body, which pulsed with pain. As Bai Xiaochun thought back to the fight, fear welled up within him, and he trembled. Why did I come back? That was so dangerous. I might have lost my little life. Bai Xiaochun, am always careful in everything I do. How could I have been so impulsive? Just as post-traumatic stress was about to hurl him into regret, something extremely soft and yet simultaneously firm leapt into his arms. He could feel curves, and could smell a delicate fragrance. It was none other than Du Lingfei. At first, he was surprised, but his expression quickly turned serious. Holding Du Lingfei tight, he calmly said, Elder sister Du, fear not. With Bai Xiaochun here, no one will be able to harm a hair on your head. Even as he spoke, his hand suddenly found itself resting on a soft, curved surface. Thank you, she gushed emotionally, tears streaming down her face. It took her a moment to realize that somehow she was in Bai Xiaochun's arms. And then she realized what his hands were doing behind her, and her face reddened. She quickly backed up and looked at him angrily. Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat, savoring the sensation he had just experienced, and mused that Du Lingfei definitely deserved to be known as one of the top beauties on the South Bank. A strange expression could be seen on Hu Yunfei's face. Clearing his throat, he smiled at Bai Xiaochun. Junior brother Bai, we'll have time later to think about everything that has happened here. The Luochen clan is definitely going to send more people to kill us, and this time it will most likely be the most powerful experts they have under the level of Foundation establishment. We need to get out of here as quickly as possible. Bai Xiaochun shivered. He had just used every trick he had at his disposal to beat these people. The mere thought of anyone showing up who was more powerful than Chen Yu caused Bai Xiaochun's face to grow pale. Looking at the chaos around him, he instantly nodded. Yeah, you're right, let's get out of here, as quickly as possible. With that, he instantly began to run away. He cut a very different image than the vicious fighter with veins of steel. However, this time, Du Lingfei didn't find it annoying, but actually rather charming. As she followed along, she thought back to the vicious fight he had gone through to rescue her, and the glow in her eyes grew stronger. Hu Yunfei shook his head. Quickly gathering up the Luochen clan members' bags of holding, he caught up with Bai Xiaochun and handed them over. Junior brother Bai, these are your spoils of war. Bai Xiaochun threw them into his robe without even looking at them. As of this point, he couldn't stop shaking, and could only think of one thing: fleeing. A short time ago. Back in the Fallen Star Mountains, in the Luochen clan's necropolis, the Lake of Blood was surrounded by the various nodes that formed the spell formation. When the first Luochen clan member fell to Bai Xiaochun's hand, one of those nodes collapsed, and the blood inside dried up. This scene caused the Luochen clan members to stare in shock. However, before any of them could react, the same thing happened to a second node, then a third, a fourth and a fifth. Rumbling sounds echoed out continuously. The Luochen clan was completely in shock, and one face after another fell. Then, the patriarch in the middle of the Lake of Blood slowly opened his eyes. In that exact moment, a boom rang out from the node which Chen Yu had recently occupied. I can't believe that Chen Yu was just killed. They're all dead. All 7 people who were sent out have been killed. How is this even possible? Weren't they going after 2 lowly outer sect disciples? Could it be that the Spirit Stream sect knows about us, and sent a Foundation establishment cultivator? The Luochen clan members couldn't suppress their shock, and a huge commotion instantly broke out, along with looks of fear and terror. Pipe down, said an icy voice, which cut through all of the clamor. It was none other than the Foundation establishment patriarch. His voice echoed out like a thunderclap, causing the rest of the clan members to tremble and look nervously over at him. The heaven-defying chance to change our destiny, to expel the seal from within our blood, is a chance we will only come across once in 1,000 years, he said slowly. Since the decision has been made, there is no need to let our imaginations run wild. If a Foundation establishment cultivator had set foot into the security spell formation I have set up, I would have detected it. As of this moment, no Foundation establishment cultivator has come, nor have any words been sent back. What are you people getting flustered for? An unsightly expression could be seen on his face. Were it not for the fact that he had to maintain the spell formation, he would have personally gone out to wipe out Bai Xiaochun and the others. However, if he left, the inverse blood spell formation, which was the only way their clan could break free from the Spirit Stream sect, would unleash a powerful backlash. Although he might be able to survive, the rest of the clan would find their blood flowing in reverse, and would die. It wouldn't necessarily take a Foundation establishment cultivator to kill Chen Yu and his group. Those 2 outer sect disciples were either concealing the level of their cultivation bases, or have some sort of rare magical items. Even if they were concealing their cultivation bases, at the most, they might be at the 8th level of qi condensation. As for magical items, the more powerful they are, the harder they will be for qi condensation cultivators to use. Hunger. The old man's eyes glittered brightly as he slapped his hand down onto the surface of the Lake of Blood. Immediately, the blood began to ripple as a young man rose up from within, clad in a blood-red robe. He was exceedingly handsome, with chiseled features, and as soon as he opened his eyes, they glowed with the color of blood. Even as his energy surged up, 9 blood-colored ghouls appeared around him, which emitted soundless howls. When the surrounding members of the Luochen clan saw the young man, excited expressions could be seen on their faces, and they clasped hands and bowed their heads. When the patriarch looked at the young man, his eyes gleamed with kindness and praise. His voice was soft as he said, "Hunger, you are the crown prince of the Luochen clan, and with a cultivation base of the 9th level of qi condensation, you are our most powerful expert next to me. You are well qualified to handle this task. Take 9 people with you. And kill all of the outer sect disciples of the Spirit Stream sect." The young man nodded, then coldly responded, "I won't return until they're dead." He leapt up, and the 9 blood-colored ghouls transformed into a blood mist that lifted him up into the air. One by one, he nodded at 9 other clan members, after which the 10 of them left. Soon, 10 figures were speeding out of the Luochen clan mansion. The young man named Chen Heng then waved his hand, causing blood mists to appear beneath all of their feet, after which they flew off at top speed. They moved with incredible speed as they used a clan blood tracking technique to head toward the area where Chen Yu and the others had been killed. Chen Heng was in the 9th level of qi condensation. As for the rest of the group, 5 were in the same level as Chen Yu had been, the 8th level of qi condensation. The rest were in the 7th level. A squad like this was the most powerful force that the Luochen clan could afford to send out at the moment. After enough time had passed for an incense stick to burn, Chen Heng and his group burst out of the jungle of the Fallen Star Mountains to appear in the location where Chen Yu and his group of 7 had died. The shocking sight of all the corpses caused the faces of the other 9 clan members to flicker. However, Chen Heng looked coldly at the corpses, and especially at those whose necks had been crushed, and his eyes began to shine with a mysterious light. A body refinement cultivator. He suddenly flickered through the air to appear next to Chen Yu's corpse. After studying it thoughtfully for a few breaths of time, he reached down, pushed his hand onto the ground and closed his eyes. After a moment, his eyes opened. Interesting. I can sense the lingering fluctuations of violet qi cauldron summoning. That means he simultaneously cultivates both magic and his body. With such shocking fleshly body power, and an impressive magical technique, it's no wonder he cut down Chen Yu and the others. He must be one of the chosen of the Spirit Stream sect. Shangguan Tianyu perhaps? Or is he Lu Tinlei? A brutal gleam rose up in Chen Heng's eyes, within which flickered a deep desire to do battle. All of you pick a different direction to search in, he said, his voice as cold as ice. Once you track them down, send me a message immediately. With that, the others nodded in affirmation and then scattered in different directions. With a cold snort, Chen Heng picked a direction to begin searching, and flew off. The security spell formation is vast. You won't be able to leave it for the next half-month. You people are dead. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.